What is up, my beautiful gemstones? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Gemma Jade, but today we are going to be discussing the mysterious butterfly people. On May 22nd, 2011, the town of Joplin, Missouri was visited by death and destruction incarnate as an unstoppable force. An EF5 rated multiple vortex tornado rained chaos and devastation onto everything in its path as it gained speed and strength at an alarming rate, with almost no warning being given to any of the residents. It seemed to feed off of the horror and destruction it caused and obliterated everything in its mile-wide path. Its winds were up to 200 miles per hour, and when all was said and done, it caused upwards of $2.8 billion in damage to the city and to the residents of Joplin. Approximately 161 people were killed and thousands more were injured as this force of nature, which is, by the way, the 7th deadliest tornado this country has ever seen and the most costly to date, blew through the small town. The city of Joplin and the state of Missouri as a whole would never be the same again, and some people are still trying to put the pieces of their lives together almost 13 years later. However, something else that day happened in Joplin during the tornado, but depending on who you ask, you'll get a different story every single time. Let's just jump right into it. May 22nd, 2011 was a Sunday, and once the tornado had swept through the town, it looked like an actual war had been fought right there in Joplin. A war had been waged, kind of, and Mother Nature won. I've been searching for stories of what happened in Joplin that day happening anywhere else in the world at any given time, and though I'm sure the information is out there, I'm having currently a lot of trouble finding it. You see, within days, children started to come forward saying they had seen beautiful ethereal beings swirling around with the tornado and just in their general vicinity, with wings shaped like a butterfly's and providing tranquility and a calming presence to everyone who saw them. 14-year-old Lage Grisby and his 10-year-old cousin Mason Lillard were in their grandparents' truck when the tornado touched down. There was nothing that they could do, and there was nowhere for them to escape to. The tornado picked the truck up into its massive vortex and tossed it 300 feet across the parking lot they had been sitting in at the time. The kids had been waiting outside in the truck as their grandparents went inside a big box hardware store, which had been completely leveled, and they were both presumed to be dead when they were eventually pulled from that rubble. Lage was thrown from the vehicle and Mason was pinned and trapped inside of it. However, regardless of how far they were within proximity to one another, they both saw the exact same thing during the chaos. People. Human-looking beings with giant wings shaped and looking like those of a butterfly. As Mason laid there thinking she was going to die in the wreckage of that truck, she felt a hand touch her shoulder, and at first she thought that it was her cousin. When she looked over, however, she saw the being. There were two so-called butterfly people there with her, one with blonde hair and one with brown hair, and she said later on, quote, "It was kind of calming," end quote. The cousins were eventually taken to Freeman Hospital West, and the doctors there were so sure that Lage was dead that they immediately just sent him to the morgue. As for Mason, her doctor said that she would have been dead if the metal debris that punctured her body had been even less than an inch off of its trajectory. Had it gone a bit to one side, it would have punctured her liver, a bit to the other, it would have gone through and possibly severed her spine. These two cousins weren't the only people who were touched by the butterfly people that day, though. There was a mother who was running, trying to find somewhere to hunker down in or to use as a makeshift temporary shelter while she held her young daughter in her arms, but the wind quickly knocked her to the ground, where she kept a hold of her young child. As she watched in horror, she saw the tornado lift a car off of the ground into the air, and it sent it hurling directly at her and her daughter. She braced for the impact, sure that she and her daughter were going to be hit by this flying vehicle and die. She tried her very best to do what little she could to protect her daughter from the impact and braced herself, but no impact ever came. When she looked up to try and see where the vehicle had gone and why it hadn't come towards them, crushing them underneath its weight, her daughter looked at her and calmly stated, quote, "Didn't you see the butterfly people?" End quote. The little girl went on to point at the sky, telling her mother that there were butterfly people carrying people across the sky and gently placing them here or there, or just flying them around the disaster as they laid there below. Children from all over the city and other surrounding areas kept remarking to their parents or others that they were seeing or had seen these mysterious butterfly people, and all of the children were describing the beings in the exact same way. There were also kids who saw the butterfly people fluttering above them, stopping debris from raining down on them. But for the most part, no adults could see what they were talking about, though most of them knew that some sort of miracle was happening because they were being kept safe from things that should have been landing on and killing them, trapping them, or they should have been being picked up and tossed through the air to their deaths. The wind tossed hundreds of cars around and all through the air, and one man and his daughter were sitting inside of one as it flew through the void. Their vehicle was picked up, tossed, and then rolled over by the tornado and hit with all different types of debris. They should have been crushed, pinned, or killed instantly by all accounts. However, the 2.5-year-old little girl told her father not to be afraid because, quote, the butterfly people, end quote, were sitting in the car with them. When her father gently told her that there had been nobody in the car with them, the little girl was adamant, and she insisted that they had in fact been in the vehicle with them the whole time. A 4-year-old boy who had been sitting in a car with his father while they had their own brush with death came forward. As he sat there helpless with his father, they saw another vehicle come careening through the air directly at them, only for the vehicle to shoot off at an even higher rate of speed in another direction mere seconds before impacting their vehicle. That little boy said he saw the butterfly people grab the car mid-air and toss it in another direction in order to prevent it from hitting them. The father in that case admitted he hadn't been able to figure out how that vehicle hadn't hit them when it was aiming directly at them and the winds hadn't changed at all for it to have so quickly and completely gone off in another direction. A deputy sheriff later told the story about a 4-year-old little boy whom he found wandering alone in a field during the aftermath of the Joplin tornado. When they asked the boy where he had come from, he told them he had been at St. John's Hospital when the tornado hit, but they were confused because the hospital had been completely leveled and there were so many casualties because of it, and yet the little boy didn't have a single scratch on him. The little boy then explained very matter-of-factly that he had ended up in that field nearly 6 miles away from the hospital because, quote, the angels brought me and set me down here, end quote. The butterfly people were described as having multicolored wings and being surrounded by glowing bright orbs, though the descriptions did vary from person to person. The beings were always described as beautiful and or angelic. A mother managed to climb out of her vehicle while holding her daughter looking to seek refuge, possibly in a nearby ditch, when all of a sudden the tornado came barreling towards them, destroying everything in its path. That is until it reached them and seemingly changed course on a dime, leaving them completely and totally unscathed, except for maybe some real fear and possibly some later PTSD. As the mother laid there checking over and over again to make sure she wasn't dreaming and that she and her daughter had actually just missed being picked up by an EF5 tornado while lying prone on the ground in the parking lot directly in front of it, her daughter looked over at her and said, quote, weren't they beautiful, Mommy? Didn't you see how beautiful their wings were? End quote. The mother told her daughter that no one else had been there with them, but once again, the child was adamant that there had been quote-unquote angels with them right there. Angels with rainbow-colored wings covering them up as the tornado simply passed over them. There was a very young boy who was left in a field with nowhere to go and no cover to take, who was terrified as he watched the tornado coming right for him. He immediately saw, though, that there were 3 glowing figures walking toward him, and as they did, the tornado and everything it threw at them went bouncing off of their bodies and flew off into other directions. The 3 winged entities surrounded the boy as the tornado passed almost right through them, but bouncing off of them, and as it did so, he said they all looked at him and smiled before flying away and disappearing back into the turmoil. Another boy who was caught outside with his father, and despite the winds being so strong, they ripped the soles of his father's shoes off. They were unharmed when it was all said and done, and the little boy said it was because the butterfly people had gone to protect them. Clay and Melissa Morgan lived in a mobile home in Joplin with their 4 kids, 12-year-old Zoe, 8-year-old Emma, 5-year-old Eli, and 4-year-old Luke, and their home was directly in the path of what was said to be the worst of the tornado. The tornado blew the whole house open and sucked Clay and Melissa out, all while they still sat there on their bed, quote, like a water slide, end quote. No one was seriously injured, though, despite the parents being sucked out and into the air, and the children being left alone in what was barely a home anymore without walls or anything else to fend for themselves, probably terrified that their parents had died. 5-year-old Eli did come up missing, though, and the family all frantically searched for him from the moment they found one another. and noticed that he was gone. They found him not too long after, about 20 feet away from the house, wrapped up in a green rug, quote, like a burrito, end quote. The thing is, he didn't wrap himself up like that. No one knows who wrapped him up, and no one knows where that rug came from. No one in the family had ever seen it before, and it didn't belong to them and hadn't come from their home. Eli later said that he saw a winged man with brown hair hovering over him. So the children were seeing angels, or what they were calling butterfly people, but that isn't what everyone saw. Pastor Wormuth was giving a sermon at a local church that day, and the congregation quickly was whisked away to the basement of the church to stay safe once they realized what was happening outside. However, this is Mother Nature we're talking about here, and going into the basement did nothing to protect the building or the people in it, and within moments the walls were ripped down and out by the storm, all the way down to the people who were fervently praying all together at once and individually in the basement. Several people were pinned down under rocks and other debris, but then suddenly 6, quote, very large men, end quote, came barreling into the basement of the church and, in full view of everyone there, lifted all of the extremely heavy debris and other things off of these trapped people. They did their work, then quickly left, stating as they went that they had many others to help dig out that day. When other rescue service workers arrived, they were confused too, because they were the only ones in that area at that time, because as I'm sure you can imagine, emergency service workers were spread more than a little thin that day with the tornado destroying everything. Not to mention that all of the walls and everything else that had collapsed onto the people below in that basement had been way too much and far too heavy for just 6 men to lift by themselves, regardless of how large they were. It was humanly impossible. 14-year-old Emily Huddleston was driving home from her brother's high school graduation when the tornado dropped down. The vehicle she and her family had been riding in was picked up and tossed 2 full blocks, but no one was injured at all except for Emily. She had been pierced with a shard of debris in her leg and needed to go to the hospital. In the months after all of this happened, Emily would say that she would uncannily always seem to attract butterflies to her. And she actually stated, quote, "There'll be some that I just can't get to leave me alone. I look at them as my angels, I really do. I think it's more of a sign that angels were there that night. We were being watched over," end quote. So guys, I've also come across some information about adults seeing shrouded men and women, people in general, but I'm currently still investigating those claims. Could it be that these angels, or whatever they were, appeared differently to kids and adults? It would make sense to me, considering how much more open kids are than most adults. Before we get into what I think might have been going on here and just exactly what these people could have been dealing with, I would like to quote an article that I thought summed it all up fairly nicely at the end of the day. The St. Louis Dispatch said, quote, "The stories about butterfly people coursed through Joplin, passing one by one and then by many, tales describing what children reported seeing on that Sunday night in May as the tornado bore down. The children said the butterfly people protected them. These stories, tales of guardian angels, could be dismissed as a child's fanciful imaginations. But the stories have taken hold here, and as the months have slipped by, the adrenaline fading along with some of the terror, the stories have assumed a new, maybe even more important role. To understand why, you have to understand what this town of 50,000 went through and what it still faces. The tornado killed 161 people. It shredded entire neighborhoods. More than 900 homes were lost. Big box stores collapsed. The destruction was complete. The landscape rendered foreign. The tornado unleashed stories about death and unlikely survival. A teenager sucked from an SUV. A toddler plucked from his mother's arms. Houses that exploded in 200-mile-per-hour winds as families huddled in bathtubs and closets. For months, just about any place people gathered, the stories spilled out, including stories of the butterfly people," end quote. Of course, there are going to be people who will say that these people were in the midst of something unimaginable and that their mind simply couldn't handle the enormity of the situations they were put in that day, and in order to be able to wrap their minds around all of it, especially the traumatized children, they created these supernatural, ethereal beings in order to make sense of the tragedy surrounding them that they themselves remained physically unaffected by, and to perhaps ease the emotional trauma. That sounds real nice. But this is the real world. And while I might consider that explanation if it were maybe one or two people or a few kids who had seen these things out there that day, being who I am and what I do doesn't allow me to take this particular explanation very seriously. Like I said, I tried looking into other situations where people and children saw what they described as butterfly people, but the only thing I could find were encounters with angels. Some people have brought it to my attention that these humanoid beings with large butterfly wings sounded like the Fae. I agree. They sound a lot like the Fae, but I don't think that's the case. And I really do feel like the people in Joplin that day, just like so many others throughout the course of history, living their day-to-day lives, but specifically in the midst of natural disasters, saw angels or something akin to angels. Here's the thing. The Fae just aren't that interested in humanity or helping us. Now, that's not to say no Fae species is going to be interested in helping humans, but to this level, at this grand scale, like on this scale, I've never seen it, I've never heard about it, and from all the history and research, legends and lore I researched into the Fae for my first book, Missing the Fae Theory, where I talk about nothing but fairies, I just don't see the Fae having that much of an interest to be able to do what was done that day by these butterfly people. Could it have been them? Sure. Anything's possible. I'm convinced there are more stories out there about butterfly people throughout history, but that the situation in Joplin happened so recently to now. It only happened in 2011, so not even 2 decades ago, far from it. It's probably any other encounters of legend and lore and from maybe centuries ago or a century ago have been shadowed predominantly by what happened in Joplin. So I'm going to continue to look into that, but that's why I didn't name this video The Mysterious Butterfly People of Joplin, because I don't believe they just sprung up out of nowhere for the first time ever in the history of humanity that day. If they were indeed butterfly people and not something like angels or anything like that. I say all the time as well that angels aren't the beautiful creatures we always see them as being in the movies. If you notice in the Bible, every time an angel of the Lord appears, the first thing it says is, do not be frightened, or do not be afraid, do not be fearful. They're terrifying to behold unless they choose to look a different way. I don't know why they chose butterflies instead of just appearing as regular looking angels, as we always think they're supposed to look like, but for whatever reason, maybe they did. Joplin, Missouri is in the heart of the Bible Belt in the United States. And from what I can tell by looking at a map, and I'm not the most geographically smart person, it looks like Joplin would be right around the buckle of the belt more than anything else. Whatever they were supernatural beings there to protect the people. But why Joplin on that day, and why not so many other times when catastrophes and natural disasters destroyed everything and killed many more? I have an idea, but some of y'all aren't going to like it. So try to bear with me, okay? And remember, these are just my opinions and my thoughts. I'm not stating any of this as factual. Sometimes, guys, the darkness, the evil, the enemy, whatever you call it, things that aren't of the light, good and pure, get one up on us. We have a collective consciousness as light beings. I talk about it all the time in live streams, specifically in Oracle, and we talk about it together privately and in streams. There are also dark spirits that I've talked about relatively a lot on this channel in live streams, again, mainly in Intuitive Oracle on Fridays, but also I did a video about it for members. So they also have their own collective, okay? Just keep that in mind going forward. I don't think that tornado specifically, the one in Joplin on that day, was supposed to happen at that time in that place. And God and his messengers or the universe, whatever you think runs it, I'm going to say God because that's what I believe in, whatever your equivalent of that is, okay? Just hear me out. They had to take drastic action and risk exposing themselves in order to stop all of the unplanned deaths that would occur from the devastation left in the wake of this tornado. I know people will ask how come not everyone was saved, and again, I think it was just a matter of saving however many people they could and taking the rest with them to heaven or to the other side, wherever you personally believe that is. It's really annoying I have to keep saying that, but I know I do. I know I'll get some flack for talking about religion here, but it's just like when I covered near-death experience here a few years ago, it's kind of inevitable. Sometimes it's inevitable in situations like this. Now, as I always have to, or at least as I always try to, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Angels don't actually have wings, you know, they're spiritual beings and aren't made of matter, and so there's nothing for wings to attach to. But at the end of the day, they are showing up as something we will recognize so that we can know what they are, messengers of God sent from the heavens or whatever you think they are. And due to Hollywood and how notorious it is for giving us the wrong ideas and impressions of things, that's how most of the world thinks of angels. In most Christian artwork, angels are represented as having butterfly wings as a symbol of freedom from death and the resurrection. One more thing about the spiritual connection to butterflies, and then I'll move on. Each color butterfly is said to represent some message it's bringing specifically to you. So let's go through the colors. Green, healing energy. Yellow signifies optimism, joy, and blessings from above. Blue butterflies symbolize that you are being guided to pursue your dreams and express your unique creativity. When you see an orange butterfly, you should consider embracing positive changes in your life and be willing to pursue new and bold possibilities. Black butterflies are said to be the angels reaching out to you to remind you that even in your darkest hour, there is the hope of the light of dawn. The reminder that darkness will never prevail. White butterflies are a symbol of peace, love, and purity entering your spirit, and red butterflies are representative of passion and the angels lighting a fire under you, igniting or reigniting your inner fire. Pink butterflies are said to be a sign that angels are surrounding you with loving grace. So, what of the butterfly people in Joplin that day and the fact that they were described as having rainbow-colored wings? Maybe if everything I just said is definitely true and there was some way to prove it, then it meant that all of the above-mentioned things were being sent out to the people dealing with the tragedy that day, a reminder of everything beautiful and peaceful that comes from the angelic realms. Regardless of what you believe personally as far as religion, I will say that whatever those beings were, they were there to protect and save as many innocent lives as possible that day, and I wholeheartedly believe that that's what they did. If you have ever heard of other encounters with this exact type of being, these butterfly humanoids or butterfly people, please email me and let me know. Since this video will be a little short, if I end it here, let me move on to some other cases I've come across where alleged angels intervened on behalf of a human being or human beings in general and seemingly saved them from something or another. I just wanted to not make a very short video, So I found an insane encounter with an angel that happened before cars were even a thing. I was looking for like angels on the roadside and things like that. This encounter was found in a manuscript that was written in 1602 that's in the possession now of a library in Sweden. A scholar of the time, someone who we would now refer to as a paranormal writer, so certainly one of the first of its kind, named Joan Petrie Clint, wrote about the event, and what she had to say was fascinating. An acquaintance of hers told her that in February of 1602, she had been traveling to the town of Vadstena by sleigh, and he had 3 friends with him on his journey. These 4 men were making their way along in the freezing cold temperatures, trying to make the most of it and praying that they made it safely to their intended destination, when suddenly they saw a young woman on the road up ahead of them. The girl seemed somewhat confused, looking all around. She was obviously lost and wasn't properly dressed for the freezing cold temperatures. It was literally the middle of nowhere, and these men took pity on her and offered to allow her to ride on their sleigh with them, and she gratefully accepted, wordlessly. They eventually grew tired and stopped at an inn to eat, get some rest, and get out of the cold for a night before continuing on their journey the following morning. Once at the inn, the strange girl was offered a mug of beer, as were the men. As soon as the drink was set in front of her, it turned completely into malt. This happened twice, and when the 3rd beer was placed in front of the young woman, she grabbed the mug instead of just letting it sit there and turn, but turn it did, and this time it turned into blood. This girl hadn't spoken a word up to that point, and even when she graciously had accepted the ride on the sleigh, she had only done so with a polite nod of her head. However, she proclaimed loudly at the sight of the beer which had turned to blood at her touch, quote, "There will be good crops this year. There will be enough fruits of the trees. There will also be many wars and plagues," end quote. With that, she vanished right before the eyes of everyone in the tavern, including the 4 men who had brought her there in the first place. The next year turned out to be exactly as she had prophesied for that area. Now, this isn't a case where an angel saved those men or anything, but I included it to show you that angels sometimes do show up in mysterious ways and for unfathomable reasons. Maybe, and we have no way of knowing, maybe maybe these men would have made different decisions about where they were going or wanted to end up without her prophecy. The thing is, you just don't know. And back then, this happened much more often. You just have to look a lot harder to find the accounts because no one was really willing to record the encounters. A lot of people weren't even really willing to talk about them. Obviously, it isn't like today where everyone has access to everything in the click of a button or a swipe of a screen. What I mean is, sometimes things happen to us that have nothing to do with us. And who even knows how that experience, if you believe it, affected other people in the inn that night. On the site medium.com, a woman named Brandy said she had a horrible car accident when she was only 16 years old. She and a friend had been in the vehicle and it had rolled several times, bouncing violently between a camper and a building before it finally stopped, leaving shards of glass, metal debris, and serious destruction in the wake of it. Both of them were relatively unharmed, which was strange enough because the damage to the vehicle and the way it all happened for sure should have seen them with at least a few broken bones. Brandy said the only thing she noticed was that there was blood dripping all down her face and onto her neck. Brandy and her friend were trapped in the overturned vehicle, but a person who lived nearby ran over to check on them and to assure them that emergency services were on their way. All they could do was stay where they were because they were obviously not able to go anywhere, and both were afraid that if they moved, they could end up becoming seriously injured somehow. As they waited for the ambulance, though, a bunch of strange events unfolded, and I couldn't help but wonder, what was it that was really happening here? I'll let Brandy tell it, but before I do, just know that she insists she wasn't religious at all and wouldn't have ever even considered that something like what happened to her next could be real. And if someone else had told her, she would have had a hard time believing them. She said, quote, "While we waited, an older gentleman in an old green pickup pulled off the road behind us. This man helped me out of the mangled car, took me over to sit on the edge of the road, and handed me a towel to hold to my bleeding face. He had the softest voice and smelled like red man tobacco, the same thing my pawpaw chewed. He told me help was coming and checked over my friend. I heard the fire trucks in the distance, and it was just a few moments before they came up the hill. The captain of the fire department was a man named Tony, who I'd known since birth. We went to the same church, and his kids and I were around the same age. When I saw Tony get off the truck, I knew I was okay. An ambulance came and loaded us up. Tony rode with me, seeing that I was scared to death. He told me that if the car had gone a couple of inches further, the results would have been deadly. A piece of metal frame from the camper had cut through the windshield of the car, which is what had caused my head to bleed. It likely would have taken off the tops of our heads if we had gone any further. On top of that, we were 2 feet from a propane tank that had been filled earlier that week. I don't know how we dodged both of those bullets, but before we got to the hospital, I asked Tony about the old man. He just stared at me and told me there was no green truck, there was no old man, no one was around except for the lady whose yard we had crashed in. The road we were on was a dead end. The gentleman I saw couldn't have gotten around the fire trucks and ambulances to go the one way out without being seen. But I still had the towel in my hand that he had given me. Even though I was raised in church, Southern Baptist, I've never been overly religious. But I'm telling y'all, I think I saw an angel that day. I don't know why, and it's never happened again, but I know what I saw." End quote. What do you guys think about that? So let's go in the other direction and discuss just for a moment before we end people who encountered something not so angelic on the side of the road. And boy, do I have tons of stories about this type of thing happening as well. I chose one that took place in India. A man we will call Sumir was driving along a dark, unlit, and very desolate road out in the middle of nowhere with his girlfriend, and they were on their way from Punjab to Delhi. It was around 2 in the morning when Sumir, who was driving at the time, decided to try and take a shortcut that would get them to the highway quicker. In order to do this, he had to take this shortcut through a dark, desolate, and very foreboding wilderness area. His girlfriend was immediately worried and annoyed because she just had a bad feeling in general and overall about having to cut through the woods this way. Sumir shushed her and told her that he knew where he was going and what he was doing, and he kept trying to reassure her that everything was going to be fine. He got this. The girlfriend was on edge, but eventually just let him do what he was going to do anyway and take this quote-unquote shortcut through the untamed wilderness, putting them both in more danger than they were already in at that time of night on that particular road. After a few moments of driving through something that was more like a wide trail in the middle of the woods than an actual pathway or road, his girlfriend saw something odd. She noticed there was a man jogging, and she immediately started praying to God, thinking it was some sort of devil. Sumir looked to see what she was talking about, what she was praying about, and he saw the strange man jogging as well. But the man, all the while standing alongside of the vehicle, turned and looked him in the eyes and then raised his hand and waved to Sumir. Sumir thought that the guy was asking for a ride and told his girlfriend that he was going to pull over and offer the man a ride to, be a good Samaritan and help him out. Where they were was no place for a human being to be lost or stuck in the middle of the night, and he thought he would be doing a good deed for an elderly gentleman. His girlfriend wasn't having any of it, though, and she immediately started yelling, crying, and screaming that he better not pull that car over. For some reason, even though he had every intention of stopping the car and inviting the man in, his foot instead slammed on the gas pedal instead of the brake pedal, and they started immediately doing approximately 50 miles per hour. Now, this doesn't sound like they were going very fast, but if you think about where they were, this was incredibly fast, and it was also extremely dangerous because they couldn't see a foot in front of them and they were literally in the middle of the forest. Sumir couldn't lift his foot off of the pedal, but as he tried desperately to do just that, his girlfriend was still panicking and begging for him not to stop the car and to keep driving. She was absolutely desperate to get away from the jogging man beside them. Yeah, as far as that man was concerned, he had run to the vehicle and was somehow keeping pace with it without breaking a sweat. Not only that, but he was punching the passenger side window as his eyes turned all black and his face seemed to grow disgustingly paler by the moment, and he was yelling something neither Sumir nor his girlfriend could make out. Finally, after about 2 full minutes of this, the man slowed his pace and Sumir and his girlfriend could only see him in their rearview mirrors. He had stopped, was standing stone still and looking at them, knowing they were looking back, and he waved his hand again while smiling a smile full of jagged yellow teeth. They never looked back again until they were out of the woods. Literally. Was this a demonic creature trying to compel Sumir to invite it into its vehicle and then, with that invitation, into his and or his girlfriend's life? Was it only the complete unwillingness of his girlfriend to stop that saved the both of them? What was up with him slamming on the gas when he meant to simply hit the brakes to slowly stop and ask the man if he needed help or some kind of ride? I come across encounters like this all of the time, and ones with so-called angels as well, but I know that some people out there can't stand the thought that we could possibly be discussing something that they don't believe in. And so I don't bring it to you all for fear of what will happen in my usually fairly tame comment section. However, there you have it. How did we get here from the mysterious butterfly people of Joplin? I guess it just goes to show and prove that some things simply cannot be explained, and maybe, just maybe, we aren't meant or able to understand them anyway. That's all I have for you today, guys. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed the content, if you enjoyed hanging out with me, and if you watched in the premiere and enjoyed hanging out with one another. Spread the love by sharing this video, guys. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure your notification bell is turned on so you receive all of my updates for my uploads. If you don't know what to comment or don't really have an opinion one way or another, just put some sort of emoji there. It really doesn't matter what you comment. It's the interaction that matters. Check out the description box for some important links, ways to donate to the channel, PayPal, Cash App, my Amazon wish list gift link. My Patreon is back up. The only thing I can offer right now for patrons is if you donate $20 a month or more, you will automatically receive a personal intuitive oracle reading from me, a remote general, every single month as a thank you from me to you as I work on more Patreon only content, Patreon and members only live streams, and things like that. This month is the last month for everyone, patrons, members, and everyone else, to get a personal general intuitive oracle reading, a general remote from me for the month of June. So you'd order it in May. It's $20 to my PayPal or Cash App. After that, the prices are going back up and it will only be $20 for members and patrons. Okay. Also in the description box, you'll find my email address, GemmaJadeParanormal@gmail.com. Email me about whatever you need to email me about if you want signed copy of any of my books, which the links to all of my books, including my newest one, Gone, Mysterious Disappearances, which thanks to y'all became a #1 bestseller. They're all in the description box. So if you want copies of those and you want them autographed by me, let me know before you make the purchase. Also, they're available on Kindle, paperback, and Audible, and those links are in the description box. The schedule for the channel, so Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, it's myself, Ryan Paul Tremblay, and Ghost Dragon ZW doing afternoon talk. Wednesday nights at 10 p.m. Ghost Dragon ZW does like a chillaxing chat. Sometimes Ryan or someone else will join him. Every other Thursday, Miss Paranormal Pixie does Living Paranormally at 8 p.m. Eastern. On Friday, we've got the big boy at 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time, live intuitive oracle. Come on in and get your free reading. I do ask for a donation, but you don't have to donate if you don't have it. So come on in. It's actually an amazing, amazing stream. I'm usually there for anywhere from 3 to 4.5 hours. So come on in, hang out. Even if you don't want to get a card pulled and you just want to be in the presence of really amazing people who are going to make you feel so great about your life and about yourself and about anything you're going to, trustworthy people, come on in. Become a part of our island of misfit toys. Saturdays at midnight, Ghost Dragon CW reviews some of my maybe more embarrassing very early videos and some not so embarrassing videos that I've done. I was thinking about redoing some older videos. I feel like I have a lot more professionalism right now, but I'm not sure how that's going to work out. So the description box, very important if y'all want to read through it. To get a little taste of Intuitive Oracle, go and rewatch a Friday night live stream, or you can check out my shorts. I do 60 seconds for each sign. Check your sun, moon, and rising. I do weeklies, monthlies. A lot of the time I'll do angel numbers and love readings, okay? I offer a lot more types of readings than just the $20 general remote. I also have some services that I sell, homemade bath salts, homemade spiritual helper boxes that I kind of put together based on your specific needs. Things like that I don't think a lot of people know that I do, because I kind of backed away from trying to start up my own business. I'm just not in the right position at this time, but I still do help people in that way. Be kind to each other, guys. Always support the shorts, please. It's anywhere from 4 to 60 seconds of your life, and it makes the biggest difference to me and to my career, to my views, to my algorithm, like to everything. Just watching those shorts, liking them, and leaving any comment, positive comment, please. Be kind to each other, be kind to yourselves, and never accept anything less than others being kind to you. If nobody told you today, you are amazing. You absolutely are capable of accomplishing your dreams. I believe in you. I got your back. Abundance is your birthright. The universe does things for you and works with you, never does things to you, and does not work against you. Not ever, regardless of what you may think sometimes when you're not feeling so great about things. Always go in grace, smile at a stranger, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.